Ooh, and it says recording. Well done.
Says recording.
All right, excellent. I would like to begin actually with the psalm. We hardly ever do the psalm on these. And so I'd like to begin with the psalm for several minutes. The part of the Psalm 45 is just the last half of it. And I think the first half is just as interesting. Unmute. Is it safe to unmute, Father Steve?
No.
All right.
Mute Father Steve.
That sounds like a wish from a long time ago. All right, but the first half of Psalm 45, we'll just talk a little bit about that before we get to the Old Testament reading, which I think should be the center. At least I like it and think it should be. And that is, Psalm 45 is about a royal wedding. It doesn't talk about the first half in our reading for today, I think, because that talks mostly about the king. And that's not what our readings are pointed toward. I would simply say along the way that verse 4 in Psalm 45 is the inspiration for the hymn, Ride On in Majesty, which has a repeated phrase in it that is instructive. And it says, lowly pomp. And it's about the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. So he comes in on a donkey in lowly pomp. Everybody's praising him, but he's just on a donkey, on the foal of a donkey. And so we have there truth in meekness, which comes in important in this this reading in the psalm. The psalm, I was chuckling with Sharon here before we began. The Latin name, you'll notice that if you have the reading that Father Scott sent out, the title for this psalm is Eructivit Cor meum, which literally means my heart breaks out almost helplessly. I can't help it. My heart breaks out with something. And in this case, it's breaking out in praise. But I laughed at it because sometimes you can translate the word eructivit to mean belched. There it is.
Erupted.
Yeah, yes, that kind of thing.
So maybe he has heartburn.
Too much feasting?
Didn't Richard Burton sing that in Camelot? I wonder what the king is doing tonight. Yep. He's scared.
Yep.
He's going to get married. He's scared. He's never seen this girl before. And that's what's going on here. And so it begins with, "Hear, O daughter, consider and listen closely. Forget your people and your house." Doesn't that seem a little harsh? The king will have pleasure in your beauty. He is your master, so it's going to be okay. But is not this a case of making a decision? What does Jesus say? For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. I mean, both of them have to leave what they knew before. Whatever they may bring with them into the marriage, they have to leave all that before. That's not their family anymore. This is the family. And so what happens with the bride? Don't be worried about this, because you've got people here with gifts. This is glorious. There is gold here. You're going to be dressed well. This is going to be happily ever after. These are the consequences of this decision. When you marry a king, you become a queen. And I think that's the reason that the people who set up these readings wanted us to begin with this knowledge that leaving something means entering something else. And if it's the king, if it's Christ, what you are leaving, as much as you don't want to leave it, you're going to enter something better. And that's what we've got going on in the Old Testament reading. All right, so let's take that. Would somebody read? It's a long reading. and I do apologize, but would somebody read from Genesis 24, the Old Testament reading for this morning?
All right.
The usual suspects are at it again.
If you read it till you get tired, I'll finish it.
The servant said to Laban, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become wealthy, and he has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male and female slaves, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old, and he has given him all that he has. My master made me swear, saying, you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I live, but you shall go to my father's house, to my kindred, and get a wife for my son. I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if now you will only make successful the way I am going. I am standing here by the spring of water, and let a young woman who comes out to draw, to whom I shall say, please give me a little water from your jar to drink, and who will say to me, drink, and I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, there was Rebekah coming out with her water jug on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew. And I said to her, please let me drink. She quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I will also water your camels. So I drank, and she also watered the camels. Then I asked her, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nabor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. So I put a ring on her nose and bracelets on her arms. And then I bowed my head and worshiped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who led me to the right way to obtain the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. Now then, if you will deal loyally and truly with my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, so that I may turn either to the right hand or to the left. And they called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will. So they sent away their sister Rebekah and her nurse, along with Abram's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, may you, our sister, become thousands of myriads. May your offspring gain possession of the gates of their foe. And then Rebekah and her maids rose up, mounted camels, and followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebekah and went his way. Now Isaac had come from Beer-lahai-roi and was settled in the land of Negeb. Isaac went out in the evening to walk in the field, and looking up, he saw the camels coming. And Rebekah looked up, and when she saw Isaac, and she slipped quickly from the camel and said to the servant, who is that man over there walking in the field to meet us? And the servant said, that is my master. So she took her veil and covered herself, and the servants told Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her to his mother Sarah's tent. He took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death.
Okay, very good. Thank you. The word of the Lord.
Thanks
be to God.
Absolutely. Sorry, I interrupted you, and I didn't mean to cut you off at the end there. All right. Your first impression of this delightful story?
I thought that Isaac went to his father's kinsman, and he met Rebecca, and he wanted to marry her, but he had to work 7 years for his father-in-law. And then his father-in-law tricked him and gave him Leah.
Yes.
He had to work another 7 years to get Rebecca.
Something must have happened to Laban, because it was the same character that he went to. It was a grandson. That was Jacob.
Oh, okay.
And Jacob went and saw Rachel and decided he wanted Rachel for a wife.
That's
and
right.
and
Rachel,
the father tricked him and had him marry Leah first. And so
Okay.
there's,
I got them mixed up. I'm sorry.
no, it's quite all right. It contains the same central character, Laban, who is a little bit different later on in his older age. He gets to be a bit of a trickster. It may be because he was facing Jacob, who himself was a trickster as well. But that different character and a slightly different story, the next generation on. But you're quite right to remember that. Okay, what's your first impression about this story?
It's always interesting to me in those ancient times for us how they just took the woman and she went and married the guy. That was it. There was no no actual meeting or anything ahead or any. They just, this is it. You go do that. Mm-hmm. And it was the way things happened. But every time I read that, I go, oh my goodness, that was interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. It is very different.
Well, in a big part of the world today, that still happens.
Yes.
It's not like our society is prevalent in the rest of the earth. It's just white Anglo-Saxon European kind of, hey, well, you get to find your own life as compared to somebody selects one for you.
Right. And she has to agree to it. Yeah. Yeah, we sometimes did this idea, Doug, of and Anita, of the girl not having much say in it, was up through. Remember, that's part of the conflict in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet got secretly married. Their parents don't know about it, so her parents are planning on her marrying somebody else.
Yeah, right.
And that's part of the problem. And of course, she doesn't want to, and Dad gets really fiercely angry with her for that. Threatens to disown her. Here, did you notice though, the servant comes to Rebecca, presents himself, explains himself. They go to her dad and explain everything, and Dad turns to her and says, okay, do you want to go with this guy?
Oh, that's right. There was a question.
She has the right to say no.
Okay.
Which means that it looks like everybody is doing the right thing here, which doesn't always happen in the Bible.
Of course, it was interesting that when the servant was asking God for the sign, and before the words left his heart or whatever it was there, I missed the quote. It happened.
Yes.
Immediately, the answer to his request happened immediately. It's like,
or at least it seems so. Yes, we don't know if he had another half an hour to wait, but whatever it was, you're quite right. It did not take very long.
Yeah.
Notice, and something I found interesting, he asked not for something outrageous. When she shows up, I want a thundercloud or a flash of lightning, or I want her followed by a train of elephants on bicycles. I mean,
a drink
nothing
of water.
like that.
Yeah.
What he asks for is courtesy, which everybody should do, but not everybody does. And then she shows up and she follows the laws of courtesy. Abraham did that. Remember in a previous reading, Abraham did that with the 3 men who showed up at his tent. He immediately ran to get them dinner and make them comfortable. He went quickly. When God told him that it's okay to send out Hagar and Ishmael, he got up early and quickly got ready and they left. So everything is being done quickly at this point. Yes,
Rebecca.
Rebecca does exactly the same thing. She hurries. She goes above and beyond. Not only does she give him his drink, but she says, let me water your camels as well. Now,
That would be a lot of work.
yes, I was thinking about that. How much water can you carry in a jug? It's an earthenware jug, so it's got a certain amount of weight, and water is heavy. How much can you carry? A thirsty camel can drink 50 gallons in 3 minutes. She's got a lot of water carrying to do. And she does it. She runs. She goes back and forth between the camels and the spring to water the camels. This idea of hospitality is very important to her. She will do the right thing. Has the servant found the right girl for Isaac?
Yes.
Okay. And the servant himself, this is one of my favorite minor characters in the entire, maybe one of my favorite characters in the entire Bible. And we don't even know his name.
But is he really minor?
In this case, he's not very minor. He finds a wife for the one who stands in the line of Christ himself. And so he doesn't know how important he is. He's just doing the right thing. But people who do the right thing do more right than they think they do. And I think that's part of the lesson here. This fellow, Abraham, in the passages before this, Abraham calls him to himself and says, I want you to go get a wife for Isaac. And the guy doesn't ask, well, how do I do that? Abraham tells him, I want you to go to my people. Well, if she says no, do I ask the Canaanites? And of course he uses the word beware. No, don't do that. No, from my own people, find him a wife. Now we don't know if this is the same character as we hear about in Genesis 15. But back in Genesis 15, when Abraham is talking to God and saying, you say I'm going to have a son. It's been years. There's no son. And the ruler of my house is this Eleazar of Damascus. We don't know that this is the same guy. But if it is, he's finding Isaac a wife so Isaac can take his place as ruler of the house. This guy is a good guy. He's wonderful. He does everything right for the right reason. And so he goes to the place. And he does what he describes he did. He waits for the right girl. He sees the right girl. He gives her, he tells her, have I got a match for you? And then he brings out the gold for her bracelets and for her necklace and the rings. I mean, he shows that this is no ordinary piker. The guy who wants to marry you is wealthy. He's got a lot of money. So he's got a good servant who does the right thing, who believes in God, who does this for his master, who has a lot of money. What's to say no to? However, they do the right thing. They go back to Laban, to her father, and Laban is doing the same right thing as well. Like Abraham, he hurries to provide hospitality for this guy. Then he gives him his story. And then Laban, of course, Laban says, this sounds really, really good. But they call Rebecca and they say, here's the case. Do you want to go? Everybody does everything right in this. And as a result, she goes back with him on the camels she watered. She goes back with him. And when they see Isaac, she comes off the camel, puts the veil on her face. She does everything according to the customs of courtesy and rightness. So she herself is polite and courteous. And everything seems to work out quite right for Isaac. In doing all of this, do you notice something about the servant's reaction? What is the servant's primary, he has two primary concerns by my count. You may see more. But what is he concerned about?
Doing the right thing.
He's doing the right thing. And who has decided what the right thing for him to do is?
Abraham?
Okay? Yes, it begins with Abraham. His master told him, find me a wife. Then
he does ask God and blesses God too. Right
yes. Away. Abraham is the impetus. God is the one that he is willing to follow. He wants God to work this out for his master.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to pick just anybody. He wants the one that God wants for Isaac. And he's successful at it all. And success inflates some people. But for the servant of God, it makes him grateful. And that's what he's doing. He's thanking God over and over and over again in this. And he mentions God over and over. He knows who's the one behind all of this happening. Now, when he's going there, he doesn't know what he's going to find. He just goes in trust. What about us? And sometimes our future is not, we cannot see. What does this say to us?
Well, I see trust, but I also see an asking.
Okay, trust and asking, yes.
In the servant. He was trusting God, but he was also asking, will you do this? Will you help me? Will you do this for me?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing in there is obedience. He does what God has told him to do. He asks the question and he gets the right answer.
Yeah, isn't that important? When God tells you, you really should do it.
Yeah. He doesn't come up with his own scheme to select the perfect wife for Isaac.
Yes. And we could contrast this with Jacob later on. You mentioned Jacob early on. Jacob tries that. It doesn't work out.
Yeah, bad luck.
Do you see a parallel or a connection between doing as much as you can while trusting in God? How does that work out in this story? And what does that say to us about what we should do?
I was always raised by a mother who said, that you pray for things, but you also do your part.
Okay.
That was just kind of her basic philosophy in God, asking God for things, but also not just sitting back and waiting for it to happen. You were supposed to be actively engaged in the process. So
God helps those who help themselves.
Yeah, that was kind of my background for sure.
Yeah.
Don't we just hate it as teenagers when mom is right?
Yeah.
Also, maybe not to be like paralyzed with fear and just, I don't know what's going to happen. I trust in God, but I'm just like stuck. I feel like right now is a time that's challenging for a lot of people. So, there's a tendency to just, oh gosh, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Just going to stay all isolated and
bless you.
Tough.
Yeah. I think fear is a great either motivator or hindrance in us. What kinds of things are we afraid of often?
Right now we're afraid of each other.
Okay. Yes.
Kind of, sorta.
Yeah.
I mean, to be hospitable, we just talked about that. And every time I think about how hard it is right now to be hospitable, because the world is not that hospitable right now.
Right, yeah.
So it's kind of tough.
We just have to, at this time, we have to look for different ways to be hospitable.
Hospitality.
But
Yeah, we can still do phone calls and that type
Can
of
we?
thing.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
People are trying to find ways to help other people, and they're making masks and preparing food baskets, and there was one woman, she would put a bottle of wine and a lot of food and stuff in a basket, and then drop it off on a stranger's doorstep. And I think people are just trying to find ways to help each other.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if the basket is not appreciated? Should she stop doing it?
No.
No.
Okay, probably not. I think you're right. But doesn't that stop us sometimes? That we sometimes fear failure or rejection, so we don't do some of the things that maybe we should be doing?
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Okay. Do you remember some years ago there was a poll taken? I don't remember who did it, but talking about its results, it ranked the fears that people have, and they found that on this poll, fear of death was number 2, fear of speaking in public was number 1. People
Wow.
were more afraid of talking in public than they were about dying.
I have fear of flying in an airplane.
Okay.
I'd rather drive 5 days than ride in an airplane for 5 hours.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, it's that unknown factor. We like
Okay.
like to know what's gonna, even from God, it's that same kind of thing. We want assurances. We want to, where's the path, God? Show me where you want me to go. And when that kind of gets muddled, we back off just because it's that fear of the unknown.
Here's a question. Is not knowing exactly what the future is going to bring, but doing what you think is the right thing anyway, isn't that showing faith?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I think so. And so sometimes faith can be rather simple in just watering camels or feeding strangers or leaving a basket on a doorstop or making masks or something. I mean, this is doing the right thing for other people. There are things that we can do in faith for them simply because God says it's right.
The servant must have known that God was with him, because the first woman who came out to the spring or the well was Rebecca, and she was the right one. She had said exactly what he wanted her to say, or what God said she would say, or whatever, So God was with him. So I think he knew that, and they continued to do the right thing, going to ask her father, asking her if she wanted to go, because that took some courage on her part.
Yes, it did. Yeah. What did she know about Isaac?
Well, that he was a young, maybe, he had money, but he could have been some skanky old guy,
Yeah. And so is the fact that he had a servant like this an indication that he might be a good guy himself?
Yeah.
Probably. Goodness, doing the right thing, has a way of influencing your environment. We, as social creatures, we will affect each other. Have you noticed that when people get together, if they're together often enough, long enough, they become friends, they start talking like each other? They share a language, they share mannerisms, they share expressions, they influence each other. Every time we talk with someone, we change a little bit, and so do they. So we want to make sure that we affect others for good. But this is the servant who grew up in this household. He was an example of what this household was like.
Correct.
Interesting.
All right.
I said it earlier, there's a lot of power in the statement, do the next right thing, or you don't hear in a long time, is what would Jesus do, and and just trying to live your life around doing what you believe is the right thing and what Jesus would have you do is gives you a lot of power and a lot of freedom to be enjoy life and be free from the day-to-day encumbrances that we have going on right now, whether it's COVID-19 or politics or anything else that tends to destroy our serenity from a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Is there anything that can stop us from doing the next right thing?
Just ourselves.
Yeah, just us. And so I think there's a great deal, not only of wisdom, there's a great deal of power in remembering that little maxim, just do the next right thing. We don't have to look a year, a month, even a week down the road. Plan for it, but we don't have to worry about it because all we can do is the next right thing. Now, I think that leads us, or can lead us, it's going to lead us anyway, even if it can't, I guess, into the Romans 7 passage. Would somebody read the Romans 7 passage?
I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Now, if I do what I do not want, I agree the law is good. But in fact, it is no longer that I do it, but sin that dwells within me. For I know that nothing good dwells within me, that is, in my flesh. I can do what is right, but I cannot do it. For I do not do the good thing I want, but the evil I do not want is what I do. Now, if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I that do it, but the sin that dwells within me. I just read that. So I find it to be a law that when I want to do what is good, an evil lies close at hand. For I delight in the law of God in my inmost self, but I see in my members other laws at work with the law of my mind, making me captive to the law of sin that dwells in my members. Wretched man that I am, who can rescue me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, what's going on here? What I tell my students, when you see something repeated, that's probably important. So what kind of things are being repeated in all of this?
But you know the right thing, but you don't do it.
Okay. Uh-huh. With my mind, I can will what is right, but I cannot do it. Absolutely.
I see.
To do good, but the evil is repeated. Evil lies close at hand.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This is an apostle talking, and yet the tenses here are present. He's still working through this.
I do not understand my own actions. I find that to be a very interesting personal kind of thing, you know, because
okay, yes.
It's like sometimes it's, what if I do that?
What do you think is going on here, Anita?
Oh, it's not paying attention to where I'm supposed to be going, of course, or Paul is struggling with his own with his own humanness is what he sounds to me.
How many of our problems come from just not paying attention?
Probably most of them.
Most of them.
Probably a great number, yeah, a whole bunch. So what is Paul paying attention to here?
He's paying attention to what he should do compared to what he actually does. And he's saying, hey, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I do all these other things. And why he does those, I don't think he has an answer other than he's not following Christ.
Okay.
And there's a lot of that in every one of us, as much as I hate to say it, you know.
I beg your pardon. Yeah.
We want to do the easier things, you know. we tend to want to do things that give us momentary pleasure. We tend to want to do the things that we think are important now, not necessarily what is important for living a full life, you know, and it's hard to not, it's hard to do away with that because we live in the moment, we live in the now, you know, and that's what makes doing the next right thing so hard sometimes, because there's a whole bunch of other stuff I'd rather do than the next right thing, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the next right thing can be difficult. Something that I try to impress on my students and always have is don't jump to conclusions. It's very easy to jump to conclusions. It's always wrong. I have told them for many years that the single most common reason that they get questions, that they answer questions wrong, is because they're not answering the question that's asked. They listen to the first half of the question, they immediately begin formulating an answer, and they stop listening to the rest of the question at that point. And as a result, they answer a question that is not being asked. And adults do the same thing, because as I'm talking, you are not listening to each individual word and then looking at your lexicon of definitions for each individual word to take out the definition that you think I must mean and putting that into the sentence that is in your head as I talk. It would take a long time for us to get anywhere by doing that. But instead, you're ranging ahead in the conversation as I'm talking. You're thinking about where I'm probably going, and you're trying to get there before me. It's a wonder I say anything at all. You're finishing my sentences for me. But Sharon, actually, it comes from Sharon. She's the one who says, I wish you wouldn't say anything. Well, that's different, isn't it? Anyway, and you see this over and over in the classroom when somebody thinks it's funny to raise a hand and say, I thought you were going to say.
Yeah.
And I, in order to stop that, I sometimes tell them, not always, but I sometimes tell them, why do you want everybody in the classroom to know that you are wrong?
Yes.
That answer.
And so, but that's an indication. This is what we do. Not jumping to conclusions is a skill that we need to inculcate. We need to develop that so that we don't finish somebody else's sentences for them and get it wrong, which is what we very often do. Paul is doing that with himself, who is a person very hard for us to be patient with. We are sometimes very impatient with ourselves. I didn't get that, oh, I just give up. Or we'll tell ourselves stories. I didn't do that, I didn't get that right, I'm a bad person. We jump to conclusions all the time. Paul is showing us how not to do that. And he's working through this in himself. Sometimes I want to be really good, and I don't know how to be really good. How is that turning out? What do we do about that? And so we have to take time, be patient with the Bible, with God, and with ourselves in order to work these things out. What does he say is the end? Now, we know this is a problem because we all do this. We even have a word, velleity. And a velleity is a wish that is so weak it never results in actions. This is the kind of thing we say when we say, wouldn't it be nice to be able to play the piano like that? But of course, we never take lessons and we don't practice. So that's a velleity. It would be nice if we could, but we can't. And we sometimes do that, but Paul doesn't want us to do that. He says, sit down, think this through. This is what is happening. So he gives us the problem. What is the answer? And that's in the second paragraph there.
delight in the law of God.
Okay. What did Abraham's servant do?
Went to God with a request.
Absolutely. He went to God with a request. He was
With the
willing to follow
request.
God. He was willing to do the next right thing, whether it was hospitality or taking a long trip with these camels and going to find a bride for his master's son. They were willing to do everything right in the order that the right things presented themselves to him. And that's what he's doing here. Here's a problem. I want to do right things. I can't do right things. What do I do? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ, our Lord.
Who will rescue me, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, what does it mean to follow Christ? What did Christ say we had to do but take up
Our cross.
our cross? Absolutely. Now, isn't it interesting that he said our cross, your cross? He said, take up your cross daily.
Your cross.
He didn't say take up mine, but take up yours. What is that? What is the cross that you have to bear? You don't want to, but you have to learn to do it.
Your own ego, you know, your own self-interest and absorption.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Can I read the paraphrase?
Okay, sure.
This paraphrase, I always had trouble with the language in King James or the translations, because for me, what Paul is writing, it's written awkwardly. I mean, you have to sit there, pick it apart, and put it back together, which is doable. But the Message by Eugene Peterson, I clarifies some things for me. And Eugene Peterson, sometimes you can't really trust a paraphrase, but Eugene Peterson was such a man of faith. This has really helped me sometimes reading it in a language that's a little more understandable. I know that all God commands are spiritual, but I am not. Isn't this also your experience? Yes, I'm full of myself, after all. I spent a long time in sin's prison. What I don't understand about myself is that I decide one way, but when I act another, doing things I absolutely despise, but then I act. So if I can't be trusted to figure out what is best for myself and then do it, it becomes obvious that God's command is necessary. But I need something more. For if I know the law, but I still can't keep it, and if the power of sin within me keeps sabotaging my best intentions, I obviously need help. I realize that I don't have what it takes. I can will it, but I can't do it. I decide to do good, but I don't really do it. I decide not to do bad, but then I do it anyway. My decisions, such as they are, don't result in actions. Something has gone wrong deep within me and gets the better of me every time. It happens so regularly that it's predictable. The moment I decide to do good, sin is there to trip me up. I truly delight in God's commands, but it's pretty obvious that not all of me joins in that delight. Parts of me covertly rebel, and just when I least expect it, they take charge. I've tried everything and nothing helps. I'm at the end of my rope. Is there no one that can do anything for me? Isn't that the real question? The answer, thank God, is that Jesus Christ can and does. He acted to set things right in this life of contradictions where I want to serve God with all my heart and mind, but am pulled by the influence of sin to do something totally different.
What are your reactions to that? Your first impressions of that?
Similar to the reading.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
I think it is sort of clearer. I mean, it's different, and it's fun to read both of them.
Yes, it is.
Next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But full of myself is kind of a nice modern way of seeing what we struggle with.
But you used the word ego earlier, Jane, and ego is just the Greek word for I.
Mm. I think we all know the right thing to do, but we just don't do it. I think that's putting it mildly, but that's what he's trying to get across.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And the bigger question to me is why don't we do it? You know?
Right.
Yeah. Because we take the path of easy, less resistance. Maybe.
Or we don't hold back and think about whatever
Yeah.
and wait a few moments more before doing the action or saying the phrase or whatever it is. I know I'm guilty of that.
Don't believe her. No.
He tells me all the time.
You know,
Mm.
and the thing that amazes me most is if I do take my time and do what I think God wants me to do, in most cases, the outcome is so much better than if I run off on my own and do what I want to do, you know, when I let the ego get involved. And the real issue is, why am I so self-destructive at times? And maybe that's not a good choice of word, self-destructive, but why don't I do what I know is right when I know the outcome is always better than my choices in most cases? So, in all cases, in reality. So, I mean, it's one of the burdens of free will, I think, but I'm not sure how we overcome it through faith and in Christ, but it's still a difficult task for me. You know, I've got too many other distractions going on.
Mm. There's a line from C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters in which Screwtape is writing to Wormwood and telling him not to rely on big things like the war to distract his client, his patient, from doing the right thing. He said, you can use all kinds of things. You can use a paper, you can use an annoying conversation, you can use all manner of small things that will fill up his time and distract him from doing the right thing, so much so that he will neither do, and this is the line, he will neither do what he wants or what he likes. And if we live a kind of formless, shapeless life, we can wind up doing that by being distracted by everything instead of concentrating on what is the right thing to do. And it does take effort. Eugene Peterson, when he was finishing the message, the last book that he did was Isaiah. Well, while he was working on Isaiah, the singer Bono had become a Christian, wanted to talk with him, and so sent him a letter or something, and asked to meet him, and he turned him down. Gene Peterson turned him down because he was too busy to get away to talk to Bono. Well, he was reminded of this in an interview later, and the interviewer said, "Gene, Bono," and Peterson replied, "But Bill, Isaiah." And so make your choices, and that's one of the things he's talking about. Paul is make your choices. Make your choices not to react, not to jump to conclusions, not to think that you have to do something right this moment without thinking then what, but rather do what the Abraham's servant did. This is what God has sent me to do. This is the way I think we should do it. God, what do you think? Change it if it's wrong. And that combination, I think this is right, but you're open to God to let him change it along the way. I think that would be a great way of living most of our life at any time. What do you think? And how does that work out?
It's that stop again.
Sometimes it works for me. I mean, if I'm going to do something, I'll say, God, should I do this, or should I just hold off and wait and find out, give me a direction of which way I should go or what I should do. It usually works out okay.
Mm-hmm.
Either I've decided on my own to do it, or rather he's influenced me to do it. I don't know, but I think sometimes it works out very well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I seriously think sometimes we think we know better than God.
Yeah.
What?
Yes, but you're not here. You don't know what this is like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know I have trouble sometimes questioning the timing. It's the waiting for something, because I get impatient with, especially if I've asked for something or thinking about something, and it's like, oh, come on. I'm not getting answers, and then I will often go off on my own and do what I think I want to do, and mess up sometimes.
Yes, oftentimes we mess up. Of course, I'm sure that the other people here who are Christians have never done anything like that at all. But in the story of Abraham, from Genesis 12, where we are introduced to Abraham, to 15, I think, is a period of 25 years.
Wow.
So Abraham has to wait a long time. God gives him a promise, but then Abraham has a lot of things to learn before he gets to the point of having Isaac.
Mm.
What did you think of the Matthew reading? What is that? We played the flute for you and you did not dance. We wailed and you did not mourn. What on earth is he talking about?
Right. The people, I guess it looks like the people didn't recognize what his message or John the Baptist's message, either one.
What kind of message would they have recognized?
They probably needed something big and spectacular.
Yeah.
Probably. Yes, kings do that, don't they?
Yeah.
But God didn't send Jesus to do something big and spectacular during his life. And all the spectacular things he did, he kind of did in a corner, that is, away from everybody most of the time. And then oftentimes he would say, don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
When he knew full well that they would tell anyway.
Yeah, they obeyed him about as well as we do.
Yeah.
Why would God do something good and then not tell people to tell?
Maybe, could it be that he didn't want them to follow him because he could do cure a blind person or something? He wanted them to love him, or love what he stood for, love the Father who sent him. He didn't want him to love him just because he could do miraculous things.
Okay.
And didn't a lot of people think that the Messiah was going to come on a white steed and, with an army and, free them from slavery that way, but he was freeing them in another way. and they weren't prepared for that.
Well, they were thinking of in temporal terms, not in spiritual terms.
But doesn't God want us to follow him? Wouldn't he do what would get more people to follow him?
You mean evangelize?
Or even do miraculous things. Here, this is, I am the Messiah. Here, I can heal people, feed people. I am the Messiah. Doesn't God want everybody to follow him? Wouldn't he get more people following him if he would do these great things?
But I think he did his miracles, his healing, simply because he was having, and it says it many times, compassion on the individual or the family. He didn't do it to cause attention to himself. He did it to glorify God, but he had compassion on those people. The blind man, the woman who was sick for so many years, and the list goes on and on. He had compassion on the people who were following him and were hungry because there weren't any nearby 7-Elevens.
So down at the bottom, when he tells us to take his yoke upon them, when he tells us to take his yoke upon us, what does he mean?
To feed the hungry, to give water to the thirsty, to take care of this. Don't let a poor cripple sit by the gate for 25 years. Take care of him, take him home, you know.
Mm-hmm. Should you announce it?
No, you should just do it. You shouldn't say, oh, look at me, you know.
Absolutely. That would be the wrong reason for doing something good.
And when you do that, the yoke isn't light. The yoke becomes heavy. If we're doing something for God's glory, we're rewarded in ways we don't expect, and that yoke is much lighter.
To do it for the love of someone else. The word at the last sentence here, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. The word Christos literally means well-fitting. This is the right yoke for you. Before, at the beginning, you have children saying, you're not like us. Why aren't you like us? Be like us. We've done this and you haven't done the same thing that we do. Look at all of us. We're doing the right thing. We're doing what we do. You're not. And Jesus says, no, you will not be doing that because your job is something else. This is your yoke. My yoke is yours. But
I noticed too, there's like in the last sentence there, he says, come to me, all you are heavy, weary, and laden. And it's there again, you have to act.
Yes.
You can't expect him to go looking for you. You have to act. But he does go.
Verb. Yeah.
He comes across it though, all the sick and the weary, and but if you come to him, then you've done your part.
Absolutely.
And he also says, learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. And that's what we humans have a hard time doing and being. Which you've mentioned in other ways.
Okay. You remember that song, He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother?
Yeah.
Okay. And the story that it talked about? That's the kind of thing that's going on here. That's the next right thing.
Yeah, I had a spiritual advisor at one time who used to say you should do one thing nice for somebody every day, and if they find out about it, it doesn't count.
Yes.
Yeah. You mean I have to be nice to him?
Nanny, boo, boo. Yeah.
At least once.
Yeah, per day. Yes. All right. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen?
So do it early and get it over with.
Boys Town said that had that.
Sorry, Glenn.
Started Boys Town. I can't remember his name.
Who did the song?
No.
Flanagan.
No, who started the Boys Town? It was
Oh, yes, that was Father Flanagan.
Flanagan. I thought it was Flanagan. Yeah, but
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
Irish priest.
I didn't want to say Flanagan because I thought that was a Flanagan I knew back in my hometown. But
Okay. Yeah. Good Irish priest, although Irish priests would say that that was a redundancy.
Oh, yes, okay.
All right. Let's pray. Father, you have brought before us your word again, and we thank you for it. May it live in us always. Help us to live by it day by day. And as we live by it, help us to remember to pray for Yoli and for Scott and for the things and for what they are going through. Lift them up, strengthen them, help them in all their ways, so that they might arise again and call you blessed, because you are the God who provides, who gives, who heals, who helps, strengthens, and lifts up. May we trust you in all things, in our ways as well. And may we praise you in all the good that we do, because you did it first. You lead us in it now, and it is to your glory by your Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Have you heard anything more this morning about
I
what's
think
going
he
on?
sent out an
Yeah, no, not right at the moment.
he sent an email.
There's an email.
An email just came out, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. See you later.
okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. See you tonight.
Okay, see you tonight. Bye-bye.
Bye.